Accident victims like you deserve better. A husband and wife were rear-ended, and insurance offered them $10,000. We litigated the case and got them $375,000. Qualified expert attorneys can get you more. Call Zirkin and Smerling today.
Good evening, Baltimore. This is City Voters Live Podcast, and I'm your host, Desmond Stinney, on this Friday, July 5th, the day after Independence Day. I hope everyone had a happy and safe 4th of July, and that you got to see some great fireworks with good family and friends, and got to eat some good food and barbecue if you did that. We are here tonight on episode 27, joined in studio by what I have temporarily dubbed the Clipper Mill 4. I'll have to ask the group if they actually have a name that they go by. If not, we'll just let the Clipper Mill 4 stick. We've got 3 of the 4 here tonight. Recently, I came across an article, and following this situation, I came across an article where some residents from Clipper Mill are filing a class action lawsuit, naming a developer. And this stems from a previous case that I read about where the developer had filed a lawsuit against several residents in Clipper Mill pertaining to a development. And me trying to explain what happened is not going to do it justice, which is why we have these 3 of the Clipper Mill 4 here today with us. To my left is Jared Block. To his left is Jessica Meyer. And to her left is Jeff Peterzak. Good evening, guys. Thank you for joining City Voters Live.
Thank you for having us.
Hi.
Yes, everybody. We're happy to be here.
Excellent. Well, I tell you what, I'm not sure which of the 3 want to take the first question, but tell us how this all started.
Let's see. Let's try to do this in the most condensed way possible. In around the early 2000s, the City Council of Baltimore, with the signature of Martin O'Malley, created HUD, the zoning law for Clipper Mill. And then in the 5 or 6 years after that, the community began to get built. And so that the community was an old industrial area in Woodbury. It sits on around 13, 14 acres. And it's a mixed-use community. There's a condominium building that was built to resemble the original building that was on the property, dating back, let's say a century plus. There are townhomes further up the street, and then there are the overlook homes, which are the modern, say, green homes. And so the community took maybe 10 years to be built, but it was built according to a very specific zoning law, again, that was passed in, I think, 2001, 2, or 3 by the City Council and signed by Mayor O'Malley, who was mayor at that time. In 2018 or so, the community was sold. The commercial properties were sold to Valstone Partners. And Valstone Partners came into the community and proposed extensive changes that were just far and away just much grander, much greater than I think any of the residents were used to living with. And then I guess around that time, that's when, let's say, there was a very significant struggle between the longtime residents of the community and Valstone Partners. And the struggle was about just trying to, the residents tried to assert their right to have the city of Baltimore, first and foremost, honor the zoning law that was passed. Again, let's say in 2001, 2, or 3, somewhere around there. And it was an uphill battle. It was a struggle. We made a lot of headway, but it was not easy. And there were properties that Valstone Partners wanted to have developed. There was an apartment building in one corner of the property. That project, as well as the tractor building project, both of those projects were approved by the Planning Commission, and they were approved in spite of very strong objections from the residents of Clipper Mill, many of whom came out to meetings, signed petitions. Did a lot of work to ensure that the community would be maintained in the condition and in the form that it used to be for many, many years.
So on that particular project, was were the changes in that development project, was it in compliance with the PUD that was already in place, or was that kind of out of scope of what the PUD called for?
No.
Well, Jessica?
No, everything that they proposed was way beyond the scope of what would have been permissible with the PUD. And that was our primary concern. People moved into the neighborhood, purchased homes, been living in the neighborhood, and with the assumption that this PUD was the zoning law and that it would be enforced forever. And,
Right.
it takes a lot of community support to change a zoning law. And
Right.
our community did not support any change in the zoning.
And Jeff, you mentioned the struggle. So this struggle, you say, started around what year are we in at this point?
I think Valstone Partners bought the property in 2017. There was a year in which things were, I guess, let's say they were kind of as is. Nothing had really changed. But beginning in 2018, if that's correct,
They
from
started
2018, 19,
antagonizing
20,
behavior.
yeah, it was Valstone Partners. I guess our understanding is they invested a lot of money in Clipper Mill. I think they paid. Again, this is just for the industrial properties, the mixed use properties, like all the old mill space, the commercial properties rather.
Mhm.
It was a very large amount of money spent. I think somewhere in the ballpark of $19 million.
Right.
So understandably, they had a lot of they had huge interest in this property,
Mhm.
and they wanted to ensure that they wanted to ensure that it was a good investment. But the investment, to the understanding of the residents, was that what they were planning to do was not in compliance with the zoning law, and that's where that was the big struggle. And
Just to give a little bit of,
Yeah.
of history, I mean, the property was developed by Struver Brothers. It was, at the time, the attempt to try and preserve, everything, in a historical way, using materials that, match materials that were from the 1800s, and, just keeping the whole feel
Very
of the
thoughtful.
neighborhood was very thought out. Unfortunately, Struver Brothers went bankrupt at some point in time, and I think ultimately it sold to a company in New York who owned it for several years and maintained it. And then I think ultimately that's when they sold it to Valstone. Valstone, as soon as they purchased the property, I would say attempted to weaponize parking to the residents. Almost immediately, they contacted the city, and back when Struver Brothers developed the property, Clipper Park Road was a private road, and so it wasn't a city road. It was pretty, I would say, loose as far as where you could park and the rules and everything. And then at some point in time, it got turned into a city road. And then as soon as Valstone purchased the property, they contacted the city and requested a parking meter be put out on the street. And so that was.
And represented themselves as the spokespeople for the neighborhood and said, we are the appointed spokesperson
Right.
for this area, and we want this, and
So-
the neighborhood wants this.
So they took on the voice of the community in that request.
They took on the voice of the community. They requested a parking meter be put on the street, and the city actually put the parking meter out there. I don't think it was ever enforced, they would have to have somebody monitoring that, in an area where there's no other parking meter anywhere in the vicinity.
Right.
And so it was just so out of left field. And at that point in time, the residents called our council person, who was Leon Pinkett at the time. He put a temporary stay on the parking meter. So, even though it was there, it was in the sidewalk, it wasn't being enforced. And that was our first dealing, I would say, with Valstone Properties.
Right.
So I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah. Prior to that, I think when everybody moved into the property, you got a parking pass. There were parking lots in the neighborhood. You could park, in the parking lots. The condo building, everybody has a parking space in their garage, and then of course the townhomes have plenty of parking. But the lots where the commercial businesses operate out of, everybody was allowed to park there at between certain hours.
Right.
When Valstone purchased the property, that was you were towed if you were caught parking in any of those lots. That's the stance that they took. And I think when you're trying to develop a property and you want to make friends with the residents, that's not the way that you go about it.
It wasn't very neighborly.
Yeah. Right.
To tow people's cars away at 8
It's
o'clock
coming back
at
to me
night.
now because this has been talked about for some time then, because I think that there was also a situation where I think it was being discussed whether or not some building could be demolished, and I think at some point, to everyone's surprise, you just came around and that building was on the ground.
Yes.
Or something of that nature. Is that the same? Is this the same situation we're talking about?
Similar. That happened not in Clipper Mill, but in the wider Woodbury community, the historic mill homes.
Right.
He was in the process of developing that property and had a commitment with the neighborhood to maintain the historic structures. And there were meetings, there was community involvement. And then in the middle of the night, he decided that he would prefer to see those structures to be on the ground.
Got it.
There's a lot of ins and outs with the parties of who's who in this whole fiasco.
Right.
Valstone Partners is headed by Larry Jennings. Okay. And I think the group that owned the Stone homes in the neighborhood was Larry's wife at the time. I think it was Catherine Jennings. So even though they were different entities, they were sort of related. And I believe the developer that was in charge when the homes were torn down was in Fume. He was I think it's Chris. I'm not sure. Is that? Yeah.
But then the project was abandoned, and
I think he walked away from the project right after that.
Those partnerships dissolved, and now that lot is sitting empty. And
the stones are just sitting in the ground.
Well, when they're not being stolen, they're sitting on the ground.
Unbelievable.
We'll take them.
And then Jennings, you mentioned that at some point, Planning Commission went along with at least one of their projects. But if I remember correctly, does Jennings did he have a relationship or a previous relationship with the Planning Commission?
Well, I think we're uncertain about that. What we have observed is that the Planning Commission in the city of Baltimore, generally speaking, is quite, I guess, encouraging of development to happen. And I guess,
Understandably.
From a common sense point of view, the city is losing residents, and if someone wants to come in and build buildings and encourage people to come live here, I think the Planning Commission is very they're inclined to accept the plans, even in spite of objection from people who live in proximity to where the development is.
Right.
I don't know. We don't know for certain. But the planning, in our particular situation, the Planning Commission was Planning Commission approved both projects. They approved the townhome project on the pool and hunt lot, and the tractor building project, which came second, in spite of, again, very significant resident objection to both projects, because we just believe it didn't comply with the zoning code, with the law. And it is, again, what happened after that is that there's the Planning Commission, being an administrative body, there's an option that folks could take. They could have the courts take a look at the the plans and see if everything complies and conforms with the zoning law. And just to kind of fast forward, both of those projects went to the Court of Special Appeals, and they were both actually. I'm not sure if to say they were flat out, I guess, turned down is not correct. There are parts of each of the development, like the parts, let's say, that the legal,
Remanded.
the legal components of, let's say, the approvals.
Mhm.
There were points that were just not. The Court of Special Appeals claimed that there was not compliance with many of the points or some of the points, and so therefore those two projects remain. They're not done. So Clipper Mill looks
Yeah.
the exact same way today as it did back when we all moved in 2005, 6, 7, around there.
And I think it's important to also note that during those hearings, the courts said that the planning commission hearings were a sham, that those were sham hearings. Remember?
Yes, there was. Yeah,
So
I think there were.
I think that was really enlightening for us to hear that, the courts were supportive, and the fact that we didn't have, the hearings were not what would be considered an open public forum where people's commentary was being heard in a meaningful way or being considered.
I'm going to have to concur with you on that point, Jessica. The courts are where you really find out, what you've got. I mean, you're talking to someone that just last year had to sue the city to get our weekly recycling back online. And what I found is once you get it into the judiciary, you really find out, the truth of things. And the matter to run around that the city gave me, for months, a circuit court judge just said, hey, either comply with the law or change it, right? Either the law says you deliver recycling once a week, either do it or change the law. There's the only two options. So it is refreshing when you do get in front of a judge and they give you what they tell you. I mean, they're going to tell you what your rights are.
Right.
And that is the one thing that will always feel like a nice warm blanket. So at some point this turned legal.
Yes.
And tell us about that point in time when this became a court case.
Well, I'll speak. Just to give a little context on how the neighborhood is made up, besides the different types of housing and different types of people that, are basically occupy the property, the neighborhood is set up very interesting, where the condominium has several votes. We have 2 votes. The homeowners have 2 votes. And then the commercial properties, I think, have 5 votes. Is that?
Actually, yeah. So 5, 1, and 1.
5, 1, and 1.
Yeah.
So we have a board. It's called the Property Owners Association Board, where Jeff is a member, I'm a member, and then the commercial properties have a representative that's also a member.
Mm-hmm.
And so I believe that the documents that the neighborhood, the bylaws state that that party that's a member of the board can oppose a developer if they want to develop the property. And so our opposition to the development wasn't necessarily as a board member, it was as a resident. And so I think that's where the legal part came in. And that's when Jeff, Jessica, myself, 2 other people, and all of the respective associations were sued for $25 million.
$25 million. A developer had individual residents served with a $25 million lawsuit.
Yes.
Jeff, you were served?
Yep, we all were. Yeah. And it was, just, I'd never been served before, but someone just comes and they knock on your door, and no, it was a thing. I mean, it was something that it was.
I'd say it's at least a thing.
Yeah, no, it was at the time. It was yeah. There was difficulty just kind of understanding that, we are all volunteers. And so we volunteer and we just try to represent our neighbors and our neighbors' wishes. And so the neighbors' wishes for many years were about how, just how like to keep open the pool, how you want decorations to look in the neighborhood, Christmas decorations, flowers, whatever it is. It was pretty straightforward stuff. But when the development of the commercial spaces became such a possibility, we were able to then use our, I guess, capacity to represent our neighbors. And so we were just kind of, in some ways, just thrust into doing this just by virtue of just being volunteers in the community.
Mm-hmm.
And so we attended meetings, and we went to planning commission meetings. We met with Mr. Pinkett many times. We met with, Mr. Young, Mayor Young, which now is
Mr. Pinkett being the
council
person at the time for your district in the 7th district. Okay.
So there was, and it's also worth noting that there are other folks who were volunteering, and understandably, I think they decided to bow out, and because I think folks realized that things got contentious and things got it got to be a lot, and it wasn't just it wasn't small time stuff, and so we kind of stuck with it, and we went to these meetings, and we represent our neighbors, and we did what we thought was, frankly, we're doing the right thing. We thought our stance was frankly quite principled. We had there was a zoning law, the city passed this law, it was signed by a mayor. All of these folks, 133 households, bought into this property under this law, and it's a zoning ordinance, so it is a law. Mm. And have someone come in, have a company come in, and try to unilaterally undo it is a little bit. It was uncomfortable and disconcerting, and it was something that we felt compelled to fight. And I just know from my point of view that Mr. Struver, the original developer, he developed the properties, and his, I guess, kind of underlying philosophy is that he would refurbish stuff that's there, build stuff that kind of fits in with everything, and then kind of give the keys to all these households to owners. He's going to sell it to people. And the concern of what we saw coming down the pike is that the big buildings that Valstone wanted to buy, they would be just I guess large apartment buildings in this community. And while we understand that Valstone claimed that they had the right to do this, the zoning law that all of us bought our houses under, our understanding of this law was very, very specific in what it said, what could be done. Mm-hmm. And so we said, you guys could say this, you guys could want this, but that doesn't mean that it's right. And so we kind of, we frankly dug in and we opposed, and we had a very fine attorney, Mr. John Murphy, help us out, and he gave us, just exquisite advice. And it's at every turn, the man was very, very. He told us the right thing to do.
Now, and this is John Murphy. He was your representative in fighting the $25 million lawsuit.
No.
Oh, okay.
He's the zoning.
He helped to represent us at zoning hearings, right. And also he filed the appeals with the courts when the planning commission approved the plans.
Gotcha.
Where we were not heard during the meetings.
And our apologies for jumping around a lot, because this is a bit of a convoluted situation.
No.
But so back to the big one, the $25 million lawsuit, that was filed probably within 7 to 10 days after the planning commission approved the tractor building plans.
Yes.
And, by our right, all residents in the city of Baltimore, we have the right to appeal this to the judiciary, to the courts. Mm-hmm. And then Mr. Murphy, so we, again, representing our neighbors, we understood from our neighbors, communicated to Mr. Murphy that we did not think this, what on and the planning commission was valid. We wanted to address it with the courts. And so we did. And within 7 to 10 days after we addressed, or Mr. Murphy filed the appeal for the tractor building project on the development side, that is when Jessica and Jared and I and Dan and then another member of the community were named in the lawsuit, along with the two associations, which are the 133 households of Clipper Mill. And so that lawsuit, the $25 million lawsuit, came immediately after, again, within 7 to 10 days, mm-hmm. after we appealed Valstone Properties' second approval for a development by the Planning Commission. Again, we wanted to appeal that to the judiciary.
So, what were the charges? What were the
Torturous interference.
torturous?
Torturous
interference.
Torture, yeah.
That legal
So
term, like a tort.
Yeah.
is,
Interference.
Yes.
And I'm listening to you guys praise your attorney for the great sage advice and representation that was given. I'm trying to understand who advised Mr. Jennings that it was a good idea to file a $25 million lawsuit against individual residents in 2 community associations. I'm not sure where that right came in. Maybe, I guess, because there's something in the bylaws of one of the associations that you mentioned earlier. Whether or not it was good. So tell us what happened from that point, Jessica. You get this lawsuit. It says you're being sued for $25 million. Talk to us about that.
Well, it's a shock. You're shocked when you're served with these papers. There's a whole discovery process that's outlined,
right.
and you're wondering how is this going to work. Luckily, our associations have insurance, and with that insurance, we were able to find an attorney to represent us, because otherwise we would have really been in a completely different situation. Had our boards not had the ability to pay for this representation, we would have been over at that point.
Which goes back to my
and they know that
the discussion what I just mentioned about the representation of Mr. Jennings, because if he really wanted the individuals involved, the 4 of you, or the 3 of you here with the one in spirit, if they wanted the 4 of you to kind of go away, why on earth would they include the associations on the filings and then give you that access to the insurance policies of the associations? I mean, otherwise, like you said, you would not have been able to, you would have been stretched. Yes. Because the 4 of you individually would have now had to come up and find representation, but they gave you an out in the filing by including the association, which is to me it's just I don't know.
We weren't the only parties involved,
so
in opposing the plans. I mean, it was really the whole community.
Yeah,
we were just, unfortunately, at the time we were board members, and they targeted us,
right?
And so you asked who would file a lawsuit of such nature. We don't know, but
we're hoping to find that out.
The law firm that represents Bowstone, or represented them at the time, was Shapiro and Scher, and their attorney is David Appelfeld. I
think
that over the course of the process that we're involved in right now, we're hoping to get some answers to those questions in the hearing, in the class action that we're.
Yeah. And okay, so you're sued for $25 million, and now you're defending that lawsuit, and I'm assuming I've seen civil lawsuits. I've read I've seen them. They can be really intrusive, like you mentioned, Jessica, that there's the discovery process, right? And they probably demanded some things, in discovery that are uncomfortable, right?
Yes.
What were the demands, Jared? What were the demands that from a discovery standpoint?
I think all electronic records. They wanted our bank statements. They wanted, all our
everything,
emails,
hard drives,
our phones,
phone records,
you name it, electronic, anything electronic. They wanted that, as part of discovery, and so.
And that was, I mean, this is designed purely to intimidate you, right?
Absolutely.
At the end of the day, they're telling you, "Hey,
right.
we want to look at your hard drives."
Yes.
You can't look at part of a hard drive. So how now they get to see everything that you've done on your computer?
Sure.
And it's just, what happened from this? When did this lawsuit? When did you guys get served? When did that happen?
Say it was somewhere in 2019, right?
That sounds about right.
2019.
Maybe November.
It's.
It was
we
some
had the
time
date.
ago.
Yeah. It was,
Yeah.
But we knew it lasted for a year and a half. So when we were served, so I forgot, the dates kind of elude us.
Yeah.
But it went on for 18 months.
It went on for 18 months. And that during those 18 months, I guess when you got served and the 18 months that followed, that, basically where you were attempted to be bullied and intimidated by this developer, who reached out to you from the city to offer support?
I
Or
think anyone did.
Support from the city?
Yeah,
No.
we didn't get any.
I think it's fair to
so
say
residents,
nobody.
residents,
Personally,
Yeah.
did anyone reach out to me personally?
yeah.
To Jessica, to Jerry?
No, I mean,
Yeah.
Jeff, you're being sued by this developer for $25 billion. I'm sorry to hear that. Your council person?
We received nothing from anyone in the city.
Interesting. So what was the disposition of that lawsuit, the $25 billion? What happened? How did that resolve itself?
So in addition to Mr. Murphy on the development side of things, we were very fortunate to have two very good attorneys represented both associations and the volunteers who volunteered on those associations. So on our side, we had a gentleman from, I believe, Sykesville. His name was Mike Burgoyne, did a terrific job. And then on the condominium side,
We had an attorney. His name is Thomas Mint.
Okay.
Sorry. This might be.
It might be a battery thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. You're back on.
All right.
All right. Sorry.
So the attorney that represented the condominium association, his name is Thomas Minton. I believe it's Charm City Legal.
Yeah.
And finding him was very fortunate because not only is he a tremendous attorney, but he also is within walking distance of Clipper
He's
Mill,
local.
Okay.
which also makes that very unique. I don't know how I found him. I do know how I found him. That's another story. But I basically walked into his office, and when you get sued and you have coverage from an insurance company, they give you a list of attorneys that, quite frankly, are not very qualified, or
Well, you just don't know.
Yeah.
There's not. You have to do your own legwork to figure out.
Sure.
Right.
or you call like three of them on the list and they
And
say
they don't
we
even
have
pick
a
up.
conflict.
Yeah. So at some point, you've been served. You're hit with discovery. I don't know if you had any hearings or motions and things of that nature, but at some point there's a disposition. What happened?
Well, both the attorneys, Mr. Burgoyne and Mr. Minton, with Mr. Murphy's help, determined, I guess, they read the complaint that was filed by, I guess, Mr. Applefeld's firm with the support of Alstone, Mr. Jennings.
Yeah.
It was determined that the best defense we had was it was a SLAPP lawsuit, which is a strategic lawsuit against public participation,
Right.
which means they just try to, it's a lawsuit where they just try to silence you.
Yeah.
And so Mr. Burgoyne and Mr. Minton said this is a SLAPP lawsuit, and we would like to file a motion to dismiss this. And I mean, to be clear, so we are upfront with everything. They filed a motion for this for discovery.
Right.
Once I guess it was determined it was a SLAPP lawsuit, the first thing to do was to go to the court hearing. So although these folks, Mr. Applefeld's firm, requested all of those items on discovery, nothing happened to us until the motion to dismiss occurred. When the motion to dismiss occurred at the circuit court level, Judge John Nugent agreed with our attorneys. He said this is indeed a SLAPP lawsuit, and he dismissed it. And then the court case, it ended.
No Judge Nugent, by the way.
Yeah, it was a very good. I mean, it was a very good ruling for us.
Right.
And as anyone has the ability,
So they dismissed it. based as an anti-SLAPP suit.
It's anti-SLAPP suit, yeah.
Yeah,
And then,
yeah.
But then
Which again, a strategic lawsuit against public participation. And
and according to Mr. Murphy,
it's a fairly new defense in Maryland, right?
Well, it's a relatively even new tactic taken by I think folks that do this.
Mm-hmm.
According to Mr. Murphy, with regards to land use, it's been a long time policy going back decades, 100 years.
Yeah. Where
Mr. Murphy mentioned this. I'm going to get the dates a little bit kind of not totally right, but around the 1920s, the Maryland legislature, you guys could correct me if I get this wrong. The Maryland legislature allowed folks to come, like constituents to come out to zoning board meetings. So if there's a meeting and someone wants to do something to the plot of land across your street, or they want to alter the use of a building, it is your right as a constituent of the state of Maryland, the city of Baltimore, to come to a zoning meeting. And in fact, we've all seen those signs where there's a notice, and that notice is essentially an invitation that the city of Baltimore extends to anyone who is interested to come out to this meeting to have your voice be heard. And for many decades, this was something that people could go and they could speak without any fear of getting hit with any type of, no pushback. Yeah. Right. No retaliation.
Yeah.
Around 20 years ago, that is when, some developers, some companies began to make use of this. I guess this. I'm not sure if it's a loophole in the law, but they decided to threaten people from actually testifying.
Right.
So even though we're being welcome to testify,
now
that you could get a letter that will threaten you and says if you come out and you testify against one of our projects, we may we may file a lawsuit against you.
Yeah.
And so our situation was perhaps not maybe unique, where the lawsuit was filed against us after all the testimony happened.
Yeah.
A lot of folks, I know some folks in West Baltimore, they were hit with the threat of a lawsuit for just some development issues. Some folks in Fells Point were hit with a bunch of letters with the threat of a lawsuit if they were to come out and testify against the liquor board. So, what's happening is that the strategy is being employed, and it's relatively new, and it's not being done by, of course, it's not being done across the board. But it is in our situation, it was a lawsuit that discouraged public participation and people speaking out. And then it's something that we saw, as I mentioned earlier, people stopped volunteering. It silenced a lot of people. And it's probably fair to say that it was uncomfortable during that time because the environment, the tenor of the neighborhood was, people were fearful. And that's exactly what I think this lawsuit was designed to do.
It definitely was. That's exactly what it was designed to do. Did you have something to say, Jerry?
I was going to say, besides the being under a $25 million lawsuit, there were implications for the neighborhood because there was a lot of publicity at the time, and people looking at properties to purchase, or people that had their homes for sale in our neighborhood, saw a decline in interest. And not only that, but because there was a lawsuit on the neighborhood, people had trouble getting financing for, if you're getting a Fannie Mae or something backed by the government, and there's a lawsuit, they won't give you financing. So there were people that had homes for sale, couldn't sell their homes, and so they had financial hardship because of that. And
so those are fairly far-reaching impacts that I would have never thought about that, right? I would have never considered the ripple that lawsuit would cause. And at the end of the day, if you're selling your house, if I lived in Clipper Mill at the time I was trying to sell my house, I had 3 potential buyers. 2 of them were Fannie Mae. Now I'm stuck with the offer, that may not have been as good. And you can't get that back. Like those, they probably sold that property and they, have moved on. And this, what really disappoints me is a developer. Yeah, they're going to do the things that they do. They're not. It's not right. It's not what we want to see happen. But what really is disappointing is how you got no support from your representatives that you elect. It's really disappointing how no one stepped up, and I didn't see anyone really step up as these things were happening, as these things were going on. And you're elected. They're elected by the people who live in Clipper Mill, and they offer you no support. So what I was really happy to see is not only did you guys not back down, you stuck it out. Jeff, you and I have known each other some time. I remember when you guys served. I know how uncomfortable, I remember how uncomfortable that was. And you guys not only have stuck it out, but you guys are taking it a step further now. And it feels like you're doing so to try to ensure that it is not attractive for developers to try to bully and intimidate residents and to put them into a legal situation, which a lot of times people can't afford or just don't know what to do or how to do it. And what are you guys doing now? What's next for you?
Well, we recently filed the class action suit, and it was heard by Judge Fletcher Hill, and we're waiting to hear his opinion about whether or not the case will go forward or if it will be dismissed. And I think that until there's a large judgment against the people who decided it was okay to file this kind of suit, that behavior is going to continue.
The behavior is going to continue. And obviously Judge Fletcher Hill has to determine whether or not there's legal grounds for the class action suit to move forward. Another great judge. We do have some great judges in this town. And so what in the class action suit, what are the charges? Like what is the class? What are you bringing?
I think the biggest obstacle that we have to prove is that of damages, and I guess in particular special damages. And
but your claims. So what are you claiming? Let me ask a better question.
We're just asking for a jury trial. We're asking for a trial by jury for them to hear what happened to our community.
Right. But what I'm asking is, what are your charges? Like,
charges.
Yeah. A claim in a civil suit is claims. You're claiming they broke the law somehow. What law are you claiming?
Well, so Judge Harrell, so none of us being lawyers here, I will not do a good job explaining this. But this is in the public sphere.
Mm-hmm.
So Judge Harrell at the Maryland Court of Special Appeals wrote a very, very clear and strong decision. So even take a step back. After Mr. Applefeld and Valstone Properties lost at the circuit court level with Judge Nugent, they surely appealed it. They filed appeal, and that appeal was held by a 3-judge panel at the Maryland Court of Special Appeals. And Judge Harrell, as our understanding goes, or as we're told, he was a very respected judge. He's retired. He chose to come out of retirement to hear this particular case. And he was the one who wrote the response to the lawsuit. And he said that the lawsuit for $25 million. And he said that, yes, this is indeed a SLAPP lawsuit. And he included language that spoke about malice, about abuse of power, about basically using the American legal system to beat up on and bludgeon an entire neighborhood for a year and a half. And so Mr. Minton and Mr. Murphy, our 2 lawyers right now in this class action lawsuit,
mm-hmm.
they are basically taking, so the only two, I guess, artifacts, or pieces of evidence that they are presenting are the replies by Judge Nugent and Judge Harrell, and trying to compel, I guess, a Judge Fletcher Hill, and then hopefully a jury, that what is going on with the filing of these SLAPP lawsuits is not an appropriate way to use the American judicial system, because to file, to sue someone, to sue an entire neighborhood for $25 million and have it hang over them, that is done simply to intimidate, to discourage and discourage public participation, and that's what I guess we're trying to address. And so the damages. I'll
have to read the lawsuit
sure.
because it sounds like it sounds like the claim might be that they misused the court system.
Yes,
right.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
So that's
It's really
that sounds like the charge.
it's really an unusual case, and it may be
Mhm.
one of the first of its kind.
Hey, that's what our judicial system is set up for precedent, right?
That's absolutely
And I think
Yeah.
this is the biggest reason that I wanted to sit down with you guys in person is because I really feel like I really feel that this is going to be successful, and I really feel like it's going to be a precedent, right? It's going to end up being a protection for residents and citizens and people to be able to stand up and to be able to express themselves without fear. I mean, so many things don't get pushed back on because people are in fear of the retaliation and the ripple and what's with the ramifications of their speaking up is going to be. And we're just going to keep getting railroaded if we don't have people that are brave enough, like the four of you have been, to really stand up and fight back and not only defend yourselves, but now you guys are throwing blows.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's gonna be really fun to watch. I hope that it's successful. So right now, you said that the suit's been filed, and at this time it's not docketed yet. At this time, you're waiting for whether or not it's going to be accepted.
No, it's been so this lawsuit was filed. It was docketed. The parties, the defendants, filed a motion to dismiss.
The motion to dismiss. So you're waiting on the.
We're
And so
waiting
now
on
the
the
hearing
motion
has
to
taken
dismiss.
place, and so
Right.
now we're waiting. One important thing I think we left out, and I don't know how much time we have.
We have as much time as people will
Okay.
maintain interest.
So
Okay.
there's many strange twists to this whole story, but one strange twist is, so we mentioned Valstone Partners, okay, as owning the property, and they're the ones who initiated the $25 million lawsuit.
Right.
But in the middle of the $25 million lawsuit, they sold the property. They sold the property to another developer,
Right.
who I think everybody knows, probably well in Baltimore. And so that developer had an opportunity to dismiss the case or to get rid of the case, and unfortunately did not. And this was after it was determined that it was a bad faith lawsuit. This is after it went through the first round of the district court, and Judge
was-
And
Nugent.
then at some
It was
point
awaiting
dismissed.
appeal.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
It was awaiting appeal.
Gotcha. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so
It was awaiting appeal.
so that's the other part of the story that
Mhm.
So which then that
Well,
explains.
and I think it's also important to note that when the property was sold, there was a newspaper article where the new owner said,
yes,
I'd like a reset, and I would
Correct.
like to reset the relationship with the neighborhood. I would like to have the opportunity to start over and to create a better relationship with the neighborhood. But
and we did have a
didn't-
meeting with him,
and he said he owned the lawsuit.
and he said, I own the lawsuit and I can make it go away. Those were his words.
Mhm.
And it never
And
happened.
it never went away.
Interesting.
Yes.
Well, did you guys get any feedback or reasoning as to why it didn't go away?
I don't believe so, unless they were advised by whoever was representing him at the time that, not to do that. But, who knows? We don't know.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, I'll tell you what, you guys are the envy of, folks that are being bullied and pushed around who haven't been able to really defend themselves the way that you guys have. And then, like I said, I think the real interesting twist and the real reason I think you guys will end up being, being the marvel of civic engagement is that you've gone on offense right now it's I think they tried to say, well, it sounds like in the motion to dismiss, they said, well, they've already gotten their remedy. They got their lawyer, their attorney's fees covered. Well, is that really compensation? Is that really compensation for, the level of angst that must have been for you and your families? I mean, when you're getting hit with a $25 billion lawsuit, I mean, covering my attorney's fees to defend myself for something that I've never ever should have been in that position for in the first place.
Right.
That in and of itself, feels like a slap in the face, right? To think that would be enough. So, I mean, I understand that, that they're being sued, they have to defend themselves. But I mean, I don't know. These guys have made, it seems like they've made a few terrible decisions, and I'd be coming and asking for, like, can we settle, right?
I don't know how much I'm at liberty to share share with the audience. However, in the hearing,
and I would say share nothing.
Yeah. well, in the hearing, everybody, didn't want to take responsibility for anything, and basically the judge said, it can't be circular here.
Right.
Somebody's responsible.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say.
Right. And it sounds like the key word here being responsible. Like somebody is responsible.
Yes.
Who is it?
Right.
Musical chairs and defenders.
The attorney's fees, that's the big thing, is that, these are all big figures that we're dealing with. But I think when you're a development company, that the attorney's fees might be just less than 1% of the total value of the entire project. And so I just think by that expenditure is just frankly the price of doing business to ensure that the project is completed.
And that's been demonstrated.
Yeah. And
over and over again in Baltimore.
And what's so hard is just the playing field is not level. And I think that's what is like the playing, everything is just so out of whack.
Right.
And if someone chooses to kind of avail themselves of this tactic, regular folks can't defend themselves. They don't have the time, the resources, the money.
Right.
We were very fortunate where we kind of, when we were all, one component of all this is that Mr. Jennings made very clear to us his intentions very early on in this process.
To ruin us.
And he said that he would basically, do anything in his power to, he would ruin us if we did not, if we were to do anything to get in his way. And when someone sits at a table, just as we're doing right here, and is told that, it becomes kind of evident that your home is a significant asset for many people. It's your biggest asset.
It's the biggest asset. Yeah.
And to have someone come in and really just say that I'm going to put the steamroller in fifth gear and just roll over you, and you have to get out of the way. There was something very uncomfortable about that. And I think the position that we took and the position our community took was a principal position where we had a law. The law was passed by the city council, and it was really a position that was grounded in, we came here, we bought in Baltimore City, we bought under this protection of this law, and we would like the city to do the right thing and honor this law, which they did. Yeah. But we had to work really hard.
Right.
We think that, and it's hard. So I think for other people, we were, I think, in a unique position, in a position that we are grateful for. And if we could get a court to hear our case, for a jury of our peers to hear what we went through, because any member of that jury could be sitting in our shoes and be hit with a lawsuit because they went out to a meeting and they talked, they voiced their opinion. There was a dissenting opinion about some development, and people are scared to do that. And I think, as without getting, I guess we're close to the July 4th holiday, part of our country, part of what makes this place a good place is that we can dissent. We could say, you know what, you want to do this, fine, but I have the right to speak out against it.
And you participate in the process.
That is the cornerstone of democracy.
Right. Yes, it is.
Right? It is absolutely the cornerstone of our democracy. We don't exist without dissent, right? And this is a country if someone wasn't dissenting against something. And that's why I keep going back to it, because of what you just said. It is, and that is part of what our what the fabric of who we are as Americans. And it just, to this day, have any of you been contacted by your councilman, James Torrance? Have you been contacted by your council president? Have you been contacted by the mayor or the comptroller or any of these guys who are representing our democracy here locally. Have any of them reached out to you? I mean, at this point, you now turn the tables and suing a developer who used to be part of the government, right? No, has anyone offered you support from our?
I will say that James Torrance, he came in, I think,
A little bit later.
Councilman Leon Pinkett was our councilman for the vast majority of all this.
Right.
James Torrance, Councilman Torrance came in, and he's been quite supportive.
Good,
but
good.
So
Good
he's
to
been
hear.
he's
Good
been a
on
very,
you, James Torrance.
he's been, I think, a very good ally for our community.
Good.
He's been very responsive, but I think he came in after all of this had already just been settled.
Mhm.
Yes.
But during the time of the lawsuit, unequivocally, no, there was not anyone
Right.
that came forward at that time who was able to come forward at that time.
Right.
And that's just the fact.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, we'll continue to watch and I tell you as things progress with the class action lawsuit, we'd love to have you guys come back and update everyone here at in Baltimore City Voters and City Voters Live podcast. And I just want to congratulate you guys because it is a very, very tough thing to really stand up and stand out. Like just to be just to go again, and I'm really against the grain, but you're going for the grain, right? Where a lot of people won't get out there and battle. And I applaud you guys for sticking with the battle. And now, at this point, you guys were the underdog. You're like Ali when George Foreman ran out of gas, right? Yeah.
It's a good American story, right?
Yeah, it's one of the greatest story. Like he punched himself out. What did he say? He said, "I'm going to ruin you." And guess what? You guys now have the opportunity, and not that it was your goal or your intention, but this might ruin him, right? And we'll see what happens. I mean, this is a class action lawsuit. It can.
But we don't. Whatever occurs, we just would like, I think, to be heard in a court of law.
Well, it's not
have a jury decide.
It's not your intention, but I think a person who's openly said his goal is to ruin residents. No one should ever want to do business with that person again, right?
Agreed.
And I don't need you to say that. This is my opinion. This is me saying it. But no one should ever want to do business. If Larry Jennings came to me tomorrow and said he wanted to, open an ice cream store, I'd say no, thank you, right? And it's simply because of the character of that person. Like, why would he tell residents, "I want to ruin you"? The city should never do business with him again. Anyone in business with him. I mean, like, why would you want to work with someone whose goal is to ruin residents?
It is a fact that he said this to us. He said it to us, and that's what happened.
If that's what's said, then
that's what was said.
Hey, it's a wrap. I don't think that guy should be doing projects in Baltimore City. Well, thank you guys for stopping by. I look forward to you coming back and sharing with us the updates. Go ahead.
I just want to leave just with one thought for your listeners.
Yeah.
One thing that I thought about is that, if we win, our little group wins. That's a win for everybody.
It's a win for everybody.
And so for everyone who's listening, this will help you in your neck of Baltimore.
Stand up and fight.
Right, because it's going to make it, you'll be more protected when you want to have a dissenting opinion and go out to a meeting. And now the scary thing is if we were to lose and a court dismisses this, the big we will lose, because that will basically embolden any developer, any person with deep pockets to file a lawsuit or send a threatening letter to any resident in Baltimore, any of the folks who are listening right now. And in that letter, they could say, "We will sue you up to $25 million, as they did to us." And they can do that with a high degree of impunity, knowing that our suit was not successful. So I do hope that the courts of Baltimore, Judge Fletcher Hill, and the folks who are interested in these type of things, that we really are very hopeful that the courts are understanding that the special damage in our case was that we were sued for a very large amount of money for voicing dissent. And that alone, now people lost their money, people lost money in the sale of their house, people had to hold their house longer, people had to pay association dues, all of that stuff did in fact occur. And that will be, just presented when the opportunity comes. But the biggest thing is that we were sued for voicing our dissent. And that alone is damage alone. And that is why we believe, as our attorneys do believe, that this suit has particular and strong merit.
Well, I tell you what, I think Maryland's a very tough place to prove damages, especially if they're demanding proof of economic damages. Punitive damages is a different thing. So I haven't read the case. I don't know exactly what the claims are, but I can tell you already, regardless of anything else, regardless of anything that happens from this minute on, you guys have already won. You've already won. They tried to silence you. They tried to put you in a box. They tried to intimidate you. They tried to bully you, and you fought back, right? And you won. You got the case dismissed, and they had to come out of pocket and pay your lawyer's fees. So you've won, right? And I love that you're taking it the next step and going on offense, because I think whatever happens now is just adding to the deterrence from those folks in those positions to try to use these tactics against other residents of Baltimore City and beyond, and beyond, right? So kudos to you guys. I mean, I really salute you, and this is right up my alley. I love a good mix up. You guys are really taking it to them. It's the City Voters Live podcast, July 5th, wrap up episode 27. Thank you so much, Jared. Thank you so much, Jessica. And then great to see you again, Jeff.
Thanks a lot, Desmond.
Good night, everyone. Be safe.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.